Thank you.
Absolutely.
While you're up, clears the dishes. Pouring there.
Nightcap.
Okay, everybody set?
Almost.
Yes? Okay. Calling the meeting to order at 7 p.m. Laverne, would you like to lead us in the flag salute?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Suzanne, would you please take roll?
Trustee Villalobos?
Here.
Trustee Bradall?
Here.
Trustee Shiakari?
Here.
Trustee Levin?
Here.
Trustee Gould?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. The district digitally records the audio portion of the meetings. The recorder is located in front of the board scribe. All recordings are kept in the superintendent's office for 30 days and are available during that time period for inspection by members of the public on district equipment without charge. As a community service, Pacifica Community Television records and broadcasts meetings. The board met in closed session regarding conference with labor negotiator, employee organizations, public employee performance evaluation, title superintendent. No action was taken. Approval of the minutes. Andy?
Okay, there's a recommendation to approve the minutes for, which meeting was it? I'm sorry, August 23rd, 2017.
I'll move to approve the minutes from that date when you said.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
All right.
Board passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just seeing where she has me talking about, it's not on here. Okay. Tonight's board meeting is in remembrance and honor of Mr. Jerry Downs, band director for Ingrid B. Lacey Middle School and Ocean Shores School, who passed away tragically last Wednesday, September 6th, in a single vehicle accident. Jerry has been an integral part of the Pacifica School District Band program since 2002. The outpouring of respect and admiration for Jerry by his students, current and former, parents, staff, and the Pacifica community have been amazing. Jerry's passion for teaching music to students was admirable, proven by his dedication of providing a safe place for those students that may not have fit in elsewhere and gave them the means to prevail through music. He spent much of his own time and money to support his students, and he demonstrated that dedication in many ways. Jerry was all about providing for his students, and that is just what he did. Jerry will be sorely missed by the Pacifica community at large. Approval of the agenda and consent agenda. All items on the consent agenda will be approved with one motion, which is not debatable and which requires a unanimous vote for passage. If any member of the board, the superintendent, or the public so requests, any item shall be removed from the section and placed in the regular order of business following approval of the consent agenda.
At this time, I believe Josie.
Yeah, well, I would respectfully request the board to pull the Serve 8C service and consultant contract approvals.
Okay. Are there any questions or discussions from the board? Public? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda minus 8C.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Board passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you. Communications.
And now we go back to 8.
Okay, going back to 8C. Josie?
Okay, for 8C, we would like to make a change on page 2 of the item. 8C is the contracts that the board approves every month. And on page 2, Infinity Communication, the contract was listed as $3,150 for 1 year. It's actually a 3-year contract with Infinity, so it should be changed to $3,150 annually, and from July 1st, 2017 to June 30th, 2020.
Okay, any discussion? Then is there a motion to approve the service and consulting contract as amended? Thank you. Second? All in favor?
Board passes 5-0. Thank you.
Now we are up to communications. This portion of the agenda is available to the public to address the board on any issue that is not on the agenda. The maximum time allowed for any speaker is 3 minutes. LSEA?
Good evening. I'm Patty McNally, and
My name's Jonathan Harris.
we're both from Ocean Shore School. And we're here tonight to speak on behalf of LSCA and the heartbreaking loss of one of our treasured teachers, Jerry Downs. It is never easy losing a person you work with every day for years and years, but it was even tougher to lose a teacher like Mr. Downs so tragically. Jerry loved the district music program, but most of all, he loved the students. I will get through this, Jerry. He loved those students in his band. Music was Jerry's passion, and he shared that gift of music with hundreds and hundreds of children in Pacifica. Mr. Downs dedicated his life to his students. I would like to thank Jerry for sharing his talent and love of music with all of us. And Jerry, your spirit will always be in our heart.
I just wanted to add just a special kind of couple anecdotes as far as a more general anecdote, but just the fact that Jerry, with any student, no matter how they were academically or socially, everybody was part of his band, and he included everyone and made a lot of people feel special, including me and my son and a lot of students. So. We really hope too that his spirit continues with the music program here in Pacifica. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. CSEA?
Just wanted to say that we're off to a good start and we look forward to an exciting year. And we'd like to see you at the LSEA CSEA Welcome Back on October 6th. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. People wishing to address the board. Jennifer Samuel? Samuel? Jennifer? Jennifer? Matthew Honger. Thank you.
Yeah, so I have kids that go to both Ocean Shore School and IBL. My oldest is in the IBL marching band, PCR, and we've been in conversation a lot with the principals as to what's been going on with the kids and the extension of the band program, which was the marching band, that allowed them to compete and actually compete because it challenged them and gave them practice, allowed them to do what they like to do and given them identity. The kids have been told there's going to be practices, no practices. Fittings, no fittings. They can march with their own music, they can't march with their own music. And it seems like the kids aren't really being asked what they like, they just keep getting told. And some of the emails from the principals are saying that they talk to the kids, but we talk to the kids and say nobody asked us anything. So I just would like more clear communication on what's going on, and that the kids that are affected by this most actually have a voice in what's going to happen in their future, and not just, we're just going to try to do the least path of resistance and just move everything and kind of just, actually do something for them instead of just trying to brush them off to the side. That's it.
Dustin McGann?
First, I'd like to offer my condolences to all of you regarding the passing of Mr. Downs. I wrote things down. It's uncharacteristic of me because I know that brevity will be needed here. I appreciate the resolve and the response of the students, parents, teachers, administration, the board, and the community during this time. I wanted to share with you briefly the benefits to my family and the community that I have been witness to during my 11 years as a volunteer with Mr. Downs and his after-school marching band program. Mr. Downs provided musicianship above all else. He raised the bar of excellence among our children. And he didn't believe that there was a piece of music that was too hard for a child. And the proof is in when our children reach high school or community college. If you talk to musicians in our community, they know which students came from Mr. Downs because of his expectations. And he believed that those children would rise to the level that you set for. This is true in both my daughters. My eldest was auditioned into SOTA after not knowing a lick of music until she met Mr. Downs. And my youngest has been an excellent performer in multiple instruments and composes her own music already prior to high school. He also provided a lot of other non-musical items. I mean, he was a safe harbor for children in an after-school program. In middle school, my eldest daughter was a victim of a rather aggressive relational bully who tracked her and stalked her for several years. And during this time, it was the band program after school that she was able to find refuge in and commit herself to. And it gave her an opportunity to build an identity apart from what was happening to her. It's extremely important for a lot of these kids to have this place. He also developed a spirit of competition among kids who don't normally have outlets for that. Some of these kids aren't sports kids. They don't have other avenues of competition, and marching band provides that for them. He provides teamwork. He makes the kids take ownership for their band as much as it's not just Jerry's. It's their band, and he makes them load the van, and everybody's heard this stuff. He makes them load the van, he makes them do all this stuff. I mean, he makes them prepare the barbecues. It's all theirs to do. He makes them work together, and they learn to work together. He also develops responsibility in them. I mean, he tells them that you're responsible for this. You're responsible for the instruments, and maybe that's evident in what's left. He also develops discipline, rigor, and leadership. So, very quickly, I know I'm out of time, or I'm getting close. At first steps, I'd like to impress upon you that the influence of this program is felt well past the middle school and is a critical component of our community. A Fog Fest and Terra Nova are big examples of this. It's impossible to fill the void that Jerry left, but I encourage you to find a replacement for him that has marching band experience, and that to host a forum of community people to determine ways we can set up a new after-school program that will include educators and parent groups, as well as the students. and discuss ways in which we can use the available resources that are existing to do so. Many Pacificans believe that music matters. This was proven by polling taken by the PEF, Pacifica Education Foundation. Well, Jerry lived this ideal, and it is his legacy. Thank you.
Elena Royale.
Hello, and thank you for allowing me to speak. I am a San Francisco Unified School District teacher at John O'Connell High School that proudly transfers her child to Pacifica schools because here he can do music. And in middle school, he can have a safe culture in his school that supports his growth at this time. And I thank you in this community for providing that to my family and my child. I'm very grateful. The day he walked into Ocean Shore, he said, "Mom, there's nowhere else I want to be." And it's a good place to be. And the morning after Mr. Downs' passing, it's where I needed to be. And I need to help these children have what they need, their outlet. I understand and respect finances. I understand and respect budgets. But at this time, I'm asking you to put your money where your heart is and to back up this band program and let it go, because if it was baseball, you wouldn't tell the kids, "Go home, we don't play this season." We wouldn't do that. We don't give up. And what you heard tonight is that Jerry Downs teaches these children to lead. He put my son as first trumpet. My son's like, "Mom, I'm not ready, but I am first trumpet." And I said, "Son, right now is your chance to show that and to pull your brass section together." And Alan, he's ready to lead. And I want you to allow these children to do what Mr. Downs has taught them. It's not that they had 2 weeks. He worked all summer with these children. I didn't pay a dime, and my child got free band camp all summer to get ready for Fog Fest, to be ready to compete, and to make sure that they have a community together. And that's what they've built. And as families and as educators, I want to support this program. My son went to San Francisco Unified School District, where I taught for many years, and he took music. And his first day at Ocean Shore, Mr. Downs said, "Hey, I hear you've taken 2 years of music." And the whole school had been 6th grade, 2 weeks in band. And he goes, "Mama, they played so much better than me after 2 years, once a week for an hour." And that's 2 weeks. And he really has done incredible things, and I want you to please give these children the chance to shine, and please don't take that away and let others take that space. There's space for all of us to show our love for Mr. Downs, and as a community, we need to respect that everyone has a different space, some that are there now. Imagine being an 8th grader in this position. It's different than being a 10th grader. You had your experience. Thank you.
Lori Smith.
Hi. So I'm coming here as an alumni band parent. My son, Matt, was a 6th grader in Mr. Downs' band in 2006, I think it was. Then he went on to 4 years of Terra Nova band, and then he was in University of Berkeley's Cal's marching band for 2 years. He was band was the one group that he felt a part of. As I'm repeating some of the other parents, he's not very athletic. Band was his refuge. That was his peer group all through college. That's what made the difference in starting with Mr. Downs' program. And when he was in 6th grade, and he wasn't yet in drumline in color guard, he went to all those competitions and helped. It's their club, it's their group, it's their refuge. It's not the band class. That's like nothing, who cares? That's just the class. But it's the whole program, same thing. He was in band camp every summer. Then Mr. Downs, I know you can't replace him, but he would actually take all the kids that they stayed and helped clean the band room to Great America and buy them season passes. I mean, who does that? I mean, he was just unbelievable, but it forged such a bond. It's the whole program. It's everything. And it made such a difference in my son's life starting in middle school, because that was the only group that's hanging out in the band room. That's what he did in Terra Nova immediately, and the same thing in college. He had a fabulous college experience, and it was because he started in marching band. And I honestly believe that. He has a core group. They're still his best friends today, and he graduated in May. And what I want to say is it's so important
for these kids. It's not the class, it's the whole program. It's the marching band, it's the competitions, it's the drumline, it's the color guard. A lot of the kids that did that in IBL and did drumline, Mr. Pence didn't do it in Terra Nova, but Mr. Downs had those high school students come to the band competitions with IBL because they wanted to do it. It's something that was just part of these kids, and it gives them so much confidence and leadership and makes a difference in all their lives. So I don't know the whole story. I just kind of walked in late as an alumni parent. I'm assuming it has to do with finances and that you have the money for a teacher but not for the extra programs. So I'm just asking if there's some way to find the money for this year and let everybody who's in the program have a way to get a group together to make it go further. But I think these kids started in band camp. They've got a whole season. The 8th graders have been doing this for 2 years where they've got winter guard and color guard and then marching band. I think they do 3 or 4 competitions in the fall and then the spring. You can't take that away from them for this year. There's just got to be a way to continue this program because it's their whole life. It's what they live for. It's what makes them want to come to school and gives them so much confidence that will carry them through high school and college, all of them. The majority of the kids that did band at IBL carried on to Terra Nova. And you know, we're a low-wealth school district, and we don't have a lot of the fancy programs and classes that a lot of the schools do. One last thing. When my son interviewed for, I think it was at USC, they said, tell us what about your high school. And he said, we have an excellent band program. I mean, that's the only thing that really is special. And when there wasn't an IBL band program, there wasn't a Terra Nova band program. And if this band program goes away, there won't be one for the high school, and it won't carry on for these kids. So I just encourage you to find a way to make it work for this year and then work on the long-term program. Thank you.
Zachary Phillips.
Hello everybody, I'm Zachary Phillips. I graduated from Ocean Shore 2 years ago. I was in winter drumline, jazz band, marching band. I was an officer in the band. Over the 3 years I learned about 5 instruments. And I'm currently at Archbishop Reardon training to possibly be drum major there. So band is clearly a very big part of my life, and it's a huge passion in my life. This passion and love of music was planted in me through this band program. But it's not just the music that band gave me. It's the leadership, the friendships, the opportunities, and the experiences. And these skills don't just apply to band. I can take these lessons into the classroom, into my social life, and into sports. Band is very healthy for kids at this age. And this is why it hurts to see the possibility of this program shrinking. Believe it or not, when OSS and IBL foster kids into amazing musicians, people outside of this district will notice. When I went to Reardon, the directors noticed these skills that I had gotten from the band, and pretty soon the assistant band director wanted to send the admissions director of Reardon over to IBL to go get some more band kids. But really, the kids in this program right now and in the future will get so much out of it if you guys keep it how it's going. These kids come out and they work hard in practice and performances because they want to be there and because they want to get everything they can out of it. And isn't a big part of education giving kids the opportunity to put in as much as they want? Band is a really powerful thing for all these kids, and it's going to take me a lot of places. There's no chance I would have gone to Reardon if I had never gotten into band. And a lot of the activities I do are from stuff I learned from band. And the leadership, I would probably not be a leader in anything if it wasn't for band. Really great kids come out of this program constantly, and band kids are just great people, and they learn a lot from all this stuff, from each other and from the teachers. It's a really fantastic thing, and I would just ask that whatever we can do to just help these kids out, because I got an amazing experience, and there's no way I would want anyone to miss out on what I received, because it was truly a blessing. Thank you, guys.
Justin Cottrell?
Dear members of the board, thank you for your comments tonight about Mr. Downs. I appreciate the comments from the board and also the stories I've been hearing tonight. As a parent and a fellow high school educator, it warms my heart. So like members of the Pacifica community, I've tried to process the loss last week of my friend and colleague, Mr. Jerry Downs. Jerry worked harder than anyone I've ever known in my career as a high school educator to put students first. The success that Jerry and the students have experienced over the last 15 years at both Ingerby Lacey and Ocean Shore schools was essential to the success of Terra Nova High School in achieving high standards. The success was founded on Jerry's core philosophy that, quote, if you set the expectations to be high, then the students will rise to the occasion. It seems that with the communications from Mr. Dan Little and Mr. Joe Funk the last few days, that their clarifications would put all concerns to rest. But I would like to make a few clarifications that respond to some of those claims. With FogFest, respect to that, the only schools who really compete, if you take all of the years into account, Maya's Terra Nova band started marching in 2000 as the only school, are Jefferson, Terra Nova, Valimar Cabrillo, and IBL Ocean Shore School, known as PCR in September 2015. Even though some good bands have come through every now and again, it has never been an official Northern California Band Association sanctioned event, and so only schools from 2 districts have marched in the parade as a whole. Therefore, it is not really considered a competition, and if you talk to the music credentialed colleagues of my world, they would not know what the FogFest parade is, nor would they spend money taking their band to a hometown parade when they could better spend the money at an academic performance event. These marching events are technically an extension of the classroom. According to the PSD letter sent to parents yesterday, only the Foothill Band Review is a PSD sanctioned event that they consider part of their music program. But bands who only do one event, like a student, bands who only do one event per season are not in a position where they can measure any academic music progress. It's like having a student only being able to take the SAT once. And Foothill has over 30 bands, many who have middle school programs competing in at least 3 to 4 events in the fall season. I don't know about you, but if I had more chances to take the SAT, I know that I would improve. The philosophy of one parade per season puts our kids in a fixed mindset, stresses them out, and does not allow them to show any other opportunity for academic progress. Our students deserve better. The letter also claimed that the PCR marching band was an after-school club, but the only reason Jerry Downs had agreed to it being a club is because of the Pacifica School District's lack of transparency between Jerry, District Business Services, and his other music colleagues who did not always align with his philosophies. I have messages that Jerry had copied me on that back up this claim. There are many other questions too numerous to mention, so need to be addressed. I'm wrapping up. We all know that things that matter are never easy. We cannot replace Jerry completely, but we all need a community forum to discuss the future of this marching program so that all voices can be heard and meet the needs of all of our students. Our students deserve and should receive better. I look forward to a continued dialogue, and I really thank the board, I thank the board very much for allowing me to share my concerns tonight. Thank you.
Okay, I will see, is Jennifer Samuel here?
Yeah.
Jennifer?
Jennifer Samuel?
Yep. Hi, I'm Jerry Downs' emergency contact, and I was involved in, being at the hospital when all this happened. So I'm just here to say, I'm sure you guys all are wondering kind of what's the plan memorial-wise. And since it happened I brought a little picture of Jerry as a band student in 60-something in his little uniform, but I thought you guys want to look at it, you can. But I'm really just here to say that we, Gracie is his trustee with me, and we are trying to, go through all of the process. of trying to figure out what to do. I know Jerry's passion was the band, and he's not going to be somebody that's easy to fill. But we're here to support the band. We're going to try to figure out some type of fund. I know funding's an issue. But really, I'm here to say that it's about the kids right now. We're here because Jerry didn't have any family, but the band was his family. And I'm here to say that we're his voice right now. And I'm acting as Jerry because I was his sounding board. I was his neighbor for 15 years. And I heard, sometimes I'd come home, let's go hide. Oh, no, it's going to be an hour conversation. Let's go hide. Because I'm sure you've all been through that. And he could be a little prickly, and he didn't have a filter. But when it came down to it, it was about our kids and the band. And he loved the band. And the last conversation I had with him about the band was that he was worried that there wasn't going to be an after-school program because of some situations. And I just said, we need more support from other people, maybe the community. It sounds to me like it's not just a school board thing. It's going to be a community issue, and we're all going to have to kind of come together and figure out how to do this. But I'm just here to say, if you have questions, we're not going to be doing a funeral because he didn't want that. This is a tragedy, but we want to celebrate his life. And ultimately, let's come back to it's about these poor children who are in a loss and have lost somebody at a young age. And a lot of us don't experience death at a young age. I was one at 15 the first time I experienced somebody dying. And these kids are maybe younger than 6th grade. So I want to bring it back to the fact that it's about these kids. So if we can make it a seamless transition with Jerry not here, and we can try to fill his huge shoes and keep it seamless for these children, because that's really what it's all about, is trying to keep the band going, have the kids be able to grieve. And that's really what I want to say. But if you have questions, you're welcome to call me. And Gracie is the trustee with me on Jerry's estate. And we do want to eventually set up a fund for Jerry. And we're here to help in any way we can. But during this whole process, we just want to let you know that we are thinking of Jerry. And we are thinking of these wonderful kids in this time of sorrow, okay? We set up Crystal Pepin, the day that Jerry died, I told her, my mom had a memories page, so we set up because of Mr. Downs' page, she set it up for me because I was like, I just can't do it. We're dealing with the state and a lot of other things, but I'm here for any ideas. We'd like to do a memorial eventually. Right now, we're trying to do something for the Fog Fest and get all the alumni together to help the kids grieve and also celebrate Jerry, but then eventually do some type of, in honor of him. And then we've also talked about doing some type of plaque for the band rooms. And when we get the funds together, right now we're waiting for the death certificate. So it's a process, and I'm sorry if I'm going over time, but if you guys have any questions, you're welcome to reach out to the Because of Mr. Downs page. And I'm part of that with Crystal. I work full time, so I'll try to help or answer any questions you guys have.
Thank you.
Okay.
Those are all the cards. I'll make sure nobody else wanted to fill out a card and speak. Okay, just to let you all know, we all appreciate all the information and the thoughts and the concerns. The board, unfortunately, this is not an agendized item, so legally we cannot speak to this topic tonight, but we have heard you. The district office has heard you, and we will go forward with this, keeping in mind what you've shared with us. Correspondence. Board Superintendent Communications. Who would like to start? I will start. I made a site visit to Ocean Shore School and had a very lovely tour by Mr. Funk. Of course, we had our work study. Wendy and I went and visited the Mothers Club and did a presentation on the school district and heard from them their concerns and thoughts. And of course, most of it surrounded kindergarten lottery. But one upbeat bit of information that one of the mothers shared, that she was shocked to hear we had declining enrollment because there were so many pregnant moms. So I told her we support that, and thank you. Yeah, so 5 years, we'll have a little bubble. And we had a few meetings on the ODSTAT project.
I can, there were several meetings on ODSTAD and various meetings and the work study. Back to school nights, went to Gallimar and Sunset Ridge and Ortega for those. And we've had quite a few band meetings recently.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm still absorbing everything. I started off by going to Ortega's back to school night, which I enjoyed very much. I always loved going to Ortega. We also did the work study for the bond, and also went to IBL's back to school night and looked at the memorial of Mr. Downs, and it's very nice and very touching.
So I went to back to school night at Sunset Ridge, and that was very enlightening. I sat through sort of the kickoff introductions to a second grade class, and I also spoke to the Spanish instructor who's leading the program there. And then last night I went back to Sunset Ridge for more, and it was PTO, Social Emotional Learning Night. And it was an incredible experience. We spent about an hour and a half. There were probably, my count is roughly 30 parents there, more or less. And we did exercises for about an hour to, I assume, similar to the types of activities that they're doing with children. And I found it really interesting. Some of the exercises really were there to help you open up and not be shy, and also to be introspective and think about how you feel and how you interact with others. There was another activity that was really designed to make you sociable and not sort of close up, and you basically almost had to talk to everybody in the room using this one activity. So it was great. I'm looking forward to the next one because I want to go as well. And I'm only, my only sadness is that we can't offer this every year for every school. So it's every other year, and then schools have to sort of continue on the practices on their own. So I wish we could support it even more.
Went to the work study, and we're going to hear a little bit more about a possible bond, so GO bond. So I'll be ready to hear Mr. Godby and the presentation, and we get to talk about that with each other. There is also next Monday night the San Mateo County CSBA meeting that we are very encouraged to go to. It's going to be something kind of different. We're meeting with San Francisco Unified and a bit of a CSBA roadshow. I asked Mark Friedman what that meant, and he said, "Come and see." So hopefully we'll all get to that.
Thank you.
Okay, first, I would like to congratulate some of our classified employees who are moving forward into permanent status. And that would be Gerald Kern and Frank C. in the maintenance department, and Jose Parada as custodial 2 at IBL. So congratulations to those employees as they move forward into permanent status. It has been an extremely difficult few days, and I anticipate we will continue healing the process with the loss of Jerry. Words can't express the gratitude, the strength, the perseverance, and the compassion that have been demonstrated by the staff at IBL and Ocean Shore. Thank you first and foremost to the swift actions of select IBL teachers and our parent Esther. Is it Esther Lynn? Yeah, Esther Lynn, who came to the assistance of Mr. Downs, to the dynamic duo of Shar Hilo and Barbara Lynn in the front office, to Megan Newberger for her controlled, methodic work in providing emotional support for everyone. And of course to Mr. Dan Little, principal, and Mr. Gordon Wee, assistant principal, for their thoughtful leadership throughout the day. We appreciated the support of the Pacifica Police Department, who led the entire investigation in a very compassionate manner, and to Samtrans, who came out to guide our students for a safe and orderly dismissal. Thank you to Dr. Avila for setting up the crisis team, and Megan and Cecile for leading the teams at their respective schools. Again, thank you, Dan, Gordon, Joe, and Siva for leading the way over these past few days. And thank you, staff and families and community at large, for ensuring an empathetic and caring community to support our students. Natalie Aganante over at Back to School Night, making sure those students remain whole and keeping our memories safe at Ocean Shore. We realize such a tragedy will take much time. The music program will move forward, and we thank Mr. Umbahagen for taking on the band director position at this time to ensure that we continue a focus on making the program whole, however that will look. Mr. Toland will continue in supporting Mr. Umbahagen at least for the remainder of the month, if not sooner, dependent upon their schedules. We thank the PSD community because grades 3 through 5, we have had to place the music program on hold, and we thank you for your understanding. We are currently working with the principals to support however this affects the school program. We know that the students have enjoyed the music program in grades 3 through 5, so we want to make sure that they know we will continue when the time is right. So lastly, we do want to support Jennifer. I'm glad she came today, who is our contact person regarding a memorial for Jerry. We will post the contact information on our website to make sure people are informed and aware. We thank you all for everyone's compassion in helping support us and our PSD community moving forward. Thank you.
Okay, presentations. Resolution number 2017-09-13-A, Week of the Administrator, LCAP goal number 1. Wendy?
Okay. Thank you, administrators, for your attendance to this meeting tonight. It's not often we get to talk about the hard work that you do each and every day at your school sites. And so what I would like to do is read to you a resolution for all of you in relationship to Week of the School Administrator. Whereas leadership matters for California's public education system and the more than 6 million students it serves. Whereas school administrators are passionate, lifelong learners who believe in the value of quality public education. And whereas the title school administrator is a broad term used to define many education leadership posts: superintendents, assistant superintendents, principals, assistant principals, vice principals, special education and adult education leaders, curriculum and assessment leaders, school business officials, classified educational leaders and other school district employees are considered administrators. And whereas providing quality service for student success is paramount for the profession. And whereas most school administrators began careers as teachers, the average administrator has served in public education for more than a decade. Most of California's superintendents have served in education for more than 20 years. Such experience is beneficial in their work to effectively and efficiently lead public education and improve student achievement. And whereas public schools operate with lean management systems, across the nation, public schools employ fewer managers and supervisors than most public and private sector industries, including transportation, food service, manufacturing, utilities, construction, publishing, and public administration. And whereas school leaders depend on a network of support from school communities, fellow administrators, teachers, parents, students, businesses, community members, board of trustees, college and universities, community and faith-based organizations, elected officials, district and county staff, and resources to promote ongoing student achievement and school success. Whereas research shows great schools are led by great principals, and great principals are led by great superintendents. These site leaders are supported by extensive administrative networks throughout the state. And whereas the state of California has declared the second full week in the month of October each year as the week of the school administrator in Education Code 44015.1. And whereas the future of California's public education system depends on the quality of its leadership. And now therefore be it resolved by the School District Board of Trustees that all school leaders in Pacifica School District be commended for the contributions they make to student achievement.
I think we should clap.
Oh, are we doing a picture? I just, you don't want to do a picture?
You don't want to do a picture? Okay. Well, even though you don't want to do a picture, we thank you for all of your work, your dedication, being that leadership role at our schools, being on the front lines. Thank you for everything. No? Okay. This is an action item. Is there a motion to approve the resolution for Week of the Administrator?
I'll move to approve.
Second? All in favor?
Board passes 5-0. Thank you.
District goals. The district values the goals provided in our local control accountability plan and strategic plan. All of our district board agenda items are tied to these goals. One or more goals are listed in the description of each board agenda item. The details for each of those district goals can be accessed on our Agenda Online public page or by visiting the district website www.pacificasd.org under District Information, Board of Trustees. 11A, General Obligation Bond Feasibility Study Report, LCAP Goal Number 1. Wendy.
Okay, so Our true discussion began in May 31st, 2017 with a work study on district financial analysis on facilities by Makiko Sato, our financial advisor at ISOM Advisors. And we really sort of talked about the difference between general obligation bond and general funded backed debt. And today's discussion is really focused on the general obligation bond. We realized at the time that as we looked at our financial analysis around facilities, that we may need to start looking at some other options. And therefore, the board supported the request for us to do a feasibility study on a potential general obligation bond and to see the outcome of how the community felt. So tonight we have presenters Brian Godby of Godby Research and Joy Tatarka and Jake Martin from TBWB, who will present the findings and make a recommendation for next steps. Brian?
Thank you, Wendy, and to the entire district staff, my condolences on your loss. It must be very difficult. So, as you know, and as Wendy described, the purpose of the survey was to do a variety of things related to a potential bond measure. First of all, we wanted to gauge the public's perception of the job the district is doing to provide a quality education and spend taxpayer funds. We looked directly at potential support for a bond measure. We looked at a variety of projects and programs and to determine what the respondents' priorities might be. We tested informational and critical statements and how that impacted their support. We looked at various rates, and of course there's a wealth of demographic information and behavioral information that we use to validate the sample, but we won't be going through that this evening. In terms of the methodology, this was a landline, cell phone, text to online, and email to online survey. The world has changed. We have a lot of different ways we communicate with people now, and it's important to communicate in the way that they prefer, not the way that we prefer. The universe was likely November 2018 with a subset of likely June 2018. We were in the field from the 10th through the 20th of August. The average telephone interview was 20 minutes long. We don't know how long it takes people to do it on their phones or on their computers because you can walk away from it and come back to it. So the start and stop is sort of arbitrary. The important thing is they can take it any time of the day or night, and we've learned that they hit the submit button online or on their phone, final one, all times of the night. So that's, again, we're on their schedule, not them being on our schedule. The sample size was 319 for the likely June universe and 454 for the likely November, and that gives us the error rates respectively of 5.3 or 4.51 for each election. Both of those technically round to 5%, so we're pretty close. Moving into the first set of substantive questions, as I mentioned earlier, we wanted to look at perceptions of quality of education. The way we ask that is we say, do you have a very favorable, somewhat unfavorable, or very unfavorable view of the job the district is doing to provide a quality of education? For analytical purposes, we add the very and somewhats together. So you can see that we've got 66.7, 67% in round numbers that have a favorable view, and just 7.5% that have an unfavorable view. We also do a little bit of math to come up with a ratio of positive to negative, and you can see that that is 8.9 to 1, which is a very good place to be. People are really happy with the quality of education in the district. So kudos to everyone responsible. The thing that is important, though, to point out, there are about 26% in round numbers of the likely voter universes, and this is the June universe specifically, that don't know. They haven't come to your meetings, obviously. They haven't read a whole lot about it. And these are people that are going to cast ballots, so it's important and incumbent on you to educate those people so they know the great job you're doing, even though they haven't reached out or sought to find out that information on their own. The next question is their opinion of your management of public funds. Here, the first thing to note is it is almost always lower than the previous question for every district we work in, so not unusual here. The favorable is 51% added together. The unfavorable is 18%. That gives us a ratio of 2.8 to 1 favorable to unfavorable. That, again, is pretty good. But yet again, we still have the now 32% that don't know. Again, they're not watching your budget. That's not unusual. So it's incumbent on you to make sure that those people understand the wise financial stewardship that you're using for taxpayer dollars in advance of putting a measure on the ballot, and should there be a campaign after the measure's on the ballot. At that point in the survey, we switched gears and we read them or showed them, depending on the methodology that we were using. The ballot question, which you see, is on the right-hand side of the slide. The idea in crafting their question is to be as close to what we thought before the survey would be the actual ballot question if we were to put it on the ballot at that point. One of the things that means is it has to be 75 words long, can't be longer than that. It shouldn't be shorter because we want to use the words to our best advantage. And it also has some legal requirements in here, and this has been vetted by your bond counsel as well. So this is legally acceptable for a ballot question. And as you can see here among the June universe, we ask definitely yes, probably no, definitely no. Again, aggregating the yes together, we've got 67.5 that are at least probably yes. And then for the November universe, we've got 71% in round numbers. If you apply the error rates that we talked about at the beginning, those are both substantially above the 55% threshold that we need to be successful. So that's a great place to start because they don't know a whole lot more about it than what we've said in that 75 words. The next slide shows an entire set of questions, and some of these are abbreviated, so I'll try to read the actual wording. But what we did here is we read in random order a list of things that we might spend the bond money on, and then asked them would they be much more likely, somewhat less likely, or much less likely to support the measure. Because that's a lot of response categories, and just adding percentages up introduces an error that doesn't really gauge the intensity or the effectiveness of any of these items. We create a numeric variable that you see here. We assign a 2 to the much more likely, a 1 to the somewhat more likely, a -1 to the somewhat less likely, and a -2 to the much less likely. It gives us the ability to create a mean score, which takes into account the intensity, not only the intensity on the positive side, but the intensity on the negative side as well. And it's a much more accurate way to rank these items vis-a-vis each other than just simply adding percentages together. We also, of course, show the percentages, so it helps put it in context. Additionally, we look at a 0.2 difference from high to low to define what we call tiers. And basically, those are items that are grouped together from a statistical perspective. So in our top group, we have upgrade classrooms and labs and computer systems to support programs in science, technology, English, arts, and math. Obviously, it all doesn't fit on the slide. Fix aging and leaking roofs, second item. Third, repair and replace outdated electrical, heating, and air conditioning systems. Fourth, upgrade classrooms, kitchen facilities, and restrooms to meet current health and safety codes. Provide classrooms as needed, and then rounding out the top tier, update classrooms, computers and technology and networking. So all of those are clearly the top of the list. They range from that 1.15 ranking to 0.99. That equates to somewhere between 74% and 65%, at least somewhat more likely to support the measure, given the varying intensity levels. Those are clearly the most important things to the voters in the community. Obviously, all of the things on the list are important from educational perspectives, but we're looking at what the voters actually think. Our second tier is positive as well, but it ranges from 0.911 to 0.72, or from that 65% level, which is good, down to about 52 or 53%, which the bottom half of this with error rates is or could be below the 55% threshold. So while these things, again, are important educational needs, they're not necessarily as important to the average voter. And then the third and fourth tier are all below the 55% threshold. So again, while they contain important educational needs, they just don't do as well with the voters, as you can see. The next slide shows yet another list of various questions. The methodology is similar but slightly different here. In this case, we randomize the list and then get a response. Are you much more likely, somewhat more likely, or does this item have no effect on your vote? It doesn't have a negative side. There isn't a less likely response category. So we can still do all the same things numerically that we did with the previous set of questions. We just can't compare these scores, apples to apples, with the previous scores because the response categories are different. So having said that, in our top tier here, we have, again, there are some abbreviations to make it fit on the slide, so I'll read those to you as well. First one is every penny from this measure will benefit local schools, be controlled locally, and cannot be taken by the state. That's number one at 1.29. It equates to about 73%, at least somewhat more likely to support the measure. It's not surprising that that's the top. It's virtually the top in every district and every city and every county and every government agency that we test something similar for a revenue measure. The second item, the technology improvements and classroom updates funded by this measure are essential to building strong academic foundation, preparing our students for high school and eventually college and the competitive 21st century job market. Technically a little bit lower, but statistically the same. And then finally, the measure will repair or replace old buildings, update aging heating systems, install solar panels that will cut utility bills, and other bond-funded projects that will save money that can be used for classroom programs. So here we're not so much talking really about the facility improvement, but we're talking about the benefit to classroom programs by saving money. And that's obviously almost always important to the voters. The remaining items are also positive, including the first one. This measure requires independent citizens' oversight. That 1.08 is about 65%, at least somewhat more likely. So it's well above the 55% threshold. But as we move further down this list, we get to the point where on the last one, none of the money in this measure can be used to increase salaries. Well, that's positive, and if somebody asks about it, we certainly shouldn't be shy to say that, but it's 55%, so that's right at the threshold we need to be successful. So that argument isn't as important, clearly, as the first one, which is the money is spent locally and can't be taken by the state. Now, there were a couple other items that we don't have a slide for this evening, and then we came, then we came to this question. I jumped the gun. So what we're doing now is we're coming back to that ballot question after having talked about how we might spend the money and some of these informational statements. And we would expect to see an increase in support, and that's what happens. For June, we've got about a 2% increase in round numbers. And for November, we have about a 2.5% increase, again in round numbers. Both are going the right direction. Both are well above the 55% threshold that we need to be successful, and both are very good signs. Then we had a couple other informational questions that we asked, which were a little bit more negative, and we come back to the ballot question yet a third time, and this time again we would predict it to go down a little bit because of the nature of the questions that intervened, and here we're back at 66% in round numbers for June and 69% for November. Again, both, even with the error rate of about 5%, we're well above the 55% threshold that we need to be successful. So again, a very good indication of the feasibility of this measure. To conclude, there's a very solid base of support for the bond measure. Obviously, it starts with 67.5%, 68% in the June election, and 71% for the November election. Comparing the two of those, well, it's clearly higher in November. I think that there's the further you go out, the more risk there is. Surveys are a snapshot in time. That snapshot was in August. There's, probably more accuracy with predicting the June outcome than there is November. There are also plenty of time, the longer you go, for other variables to intercede. Those may be economic. With every passing day, we set a new record for the longest expansion. If we can go in June, I would recommend going in June and not running a risk of something happening later on. Also, with our political climate as volatile as it is nationwide, I think, if you've got an opportunity to go early, it makes sense to take that opportunity, and you have a very strong opportunity. I know a lot of districts that would kill for a 2/3 level of support in the June election. They'd kill for that in any election. So it really makes sense to go forward, I think, earlier rather than later. The top features of the measure, as we saw in the previous slides, include upgrading classrooms, labs, computer systems that support science, technology, English, arts, and math, fixing aging, leaking roofs, and repairing electrical systems and HVAC systems. We can probably tweak the ballot question based on this list a little bit and make it a little better, meet a little bit more of the voters' perceptions of need. And then some of the top informational statements, again, that we need to make sure that we remember are the money's going to be controlled locally and can't be taken by the state. That does dovetail with that earlier concern that I mentioned about people understanding the job you're doing, managing money. Technology improvements will help build a base for success in the 21st century is important, and repairing and replacing old buildings, HVAC systems, new solar panels, the things that cut costs and help save money that can be used for classrooms are the top three. Add to that the independent citizens oversight, and I think you've got a pretty good message to get to people. Again, we think that these numbers are very good and that you should be proceeding with a June election or preparing for a June election. You don't have to make the final decision at this point, but I think you probably should be considering going in that direction. That's all I've got. I'm certainly happy to answer any questions you might have, or I can turn it over to Joy.
Anyone have any questions or?
I forget from last week and I didn't quite get it today. You have the Q6 and the Q8, the informed support, and you show in the Q6 that the measures likely went up marginally, and then they went down for Q8. What was the intervention for the Q8?
There are a few negatives. We try to model both the positive side of the equation and the negative side, which could come out in a campaign.
Sure. Okay.
And doing it that way tells you what the upside is if there were no opposition, say a ballot argument, which is most common for anti-bond measure campaigns, and the final test shows what happens if that's really effective, a negative. So it gives us sort of looks in both scenarios.
No other questions?
Okay,
Thank
I'll
you.
turn it over to Joy.
Good evening, everyone. So as Brian said, we would recommend that the board consider moving ahead with a June 2018 bond, if that's your desire. And it's important to sort of have an idea of what that looks like if we were to move forward. And here I have a bond planning timeline. Currently, we're in the feasibility study section. You just heard the results from the poll. You can see that they are fairly positive for a June election. And so tonight, you'd be making a decision about whether or not you'd like to continue at least exploring the feasibility. You're not making a decision to put it on the ballot. As you can see, you don't have to make that decision until March 9th of 2018, about that time. So between now and that date in March, really what we can do is we can spend that time building consensus in the community, doing outreach, building support among parents and staff and community members, and then putting together the ballot measure that the board would ultimately vote on. So during this next step of building consensus, I just tried to break it down month by month to make it a little bit more bite-sized, and you can see exactly what we would be talking about. Between now and October, the district would begin to engage and inform your internal school community. So we're talking parents, students, staff, your PTAs and your local boosters. Also, through November of 2017, you'd also begin that external communication period. And of course, these are very similar things to what we've done in the past when we've worked on parcel tax measures. So it's going and speaking with local community groups, just notifying elected leaders that this is something that you're looking at, and doing communications with voters at large, maybe sending out some information through the district, whether it's through mail or other resources that we could use. And then in December, continue working on that outreach, but also begin drafting a resolution and looking at all of the different projects that would be funded under a particular bond measure, because you'll eventually have to have a project list that would go with that resolution. So this is really what we do when we come back in the following year, in January of 2018 and then February. And keep in mind, it's going to be hard to do some of that communication in November and December. It just gets busy time and students are at break. So we kind of lose some of our natural audience to be able to communicate to. So, February of next year comes very quickly. At that point, we would consider doing another informational mailer to the community. We would invite them to come to the board meeting to hear about the board making a final decision if that was your choice. And then again, just before the March 9th, although I think you have a late February meeting that we're looking at targeting if that's your consideration. And then you see right here, there are two kind of next step little things that are highlighted there in gray. That's when, once the board votes, the district can only always do informational. So you can say, this is what we're thinking about doing, this is what would happen if a bond measure were to pass, these are the projects that we would fund. But you can't go that next step and say, here's how we recommend you vote. So of course you'll need to have an independent campaign committee who would take up the cause, and they would do those next two sections, voter ID and persuasion, and get out the vote, to make sure that people were aware that this was on the ballot and to make sure that they're excited and vote yes for the bond measure. I think that's it. We're at the end. Any questions that I can answer?
No questions for Joy? Thank you.
So at this time, probably the biggest thing for me would be to determine from the trustees whether you would like us to move forward on this next step of building consensus and building the measure. If so, based on your direction, I would bring forward a contract with TBWB at our next board meeting, which is, I believe, October 4th. So for discussion on that piece.
Well, I feel very strongly we should move forward. The numbers are good, and there is certainly a need, a very large need. So that would be my thoughts. Anyone else?
I think we need to go forward. The numbers are about as good as they get around here.
June looks like the way to go, because it seems strong enough in June, and that would be that would be the least expensive route to go go for the June. And, you know, to pinch every penny that we can, to try to get our coffers up you know, it's been 20 years since we've had a bond, and I keep saying, we did a real good job with that because we modernized all the schools and have not come back to the community for a bond for 20 years, and every other school district's, you know, passed 3 or 4 bonds in that amount of time. So I feel like we've been very fiscally responsible and responsive to the community and the community needs. I feel like we'll, you know, continue to have a positive response from the community.
Yeah, I concur with everything that's been said. I think we would be remiss not to move ahead and move swiftly and strongly with this.
Same for me, you know, my fear is something big happens to a school and, you know, having a minute for it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. 11B, Resolution Number 2017-09-13-C. The Pacifica School District Board of Education supports those negatively impacted by decision to rescind DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, LCAP, Goal 3, Governance. Ray?
So in regards to this resolution, we just want to say that the Pacifica School District is committed to fostering an environment in which all students are able to learn and excel, no matter whatever their national origin, ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation, abilities, gender, and economic status are. The rescinding of the DACA program is definitely not in alignment of our commitment to our students. The attached resolution is just to remind our families our commitment to support all students and families. So it is recommended that the Board of Trustees approve this resolution titled 2017-09-13-C.
Discussion?
Could you put the resolution up, because this has happened quite a few times where I guess the PDF is not right on the file name, so it doesn't just automatically open.
Yeah, what you can do is if you download it, then you have to add the extension PDF to it and it will open.
Yeah, so-
But I've got it right here if you want to.
Yeah. Thanks. And I don't know why these things aren't getting saved so that they open correctly. So it's not every one of them. Nobody else has trouble opening them?
It's intermittent with me.
Is it?
It's intermittent. Sometimes it works.
Okay.
And sometimes it doesn't. So,
Okay. So did you not have a chance to review it, or?
I did not, because I was.
Oh, okay. So we'll give you some.
So I read through it, and I am strongly in favor of passing this resolution. I think that it, well, I'm just appalled with the action on behalf of our president, and I think that this establishes our firm commitment to these students that are really just at risk of losing out on so much. Through no fault of their own. So I'm proud to be in a district where we have a resolution on the table to be passed, and I thank you for putting it forward.
I agree. Nicely said.
I completely agree with what we're doing. I do feel like we are, we've been kind of traveling this ground where, are we doing something that is going to be considered, illegal, in what we resolve? And, there can be repercussions for this. I mean, they have, sanctuary cities are kind of, coming under scrutiny. We will, because of this, we will be under scrutiny, as will many school districts. And to just say, okay, we may be going into some kind of dangerous territory, but this is what we believe.
I'll just footnote everything they said, that I think educating any child, no matter what their background is something that we're committed to doing. And, whether they're Mexican or Canadian or wherever, unless you're indigenous to this country, you are an immigrant.
Well, and to your point, I think the last paragraph is somewhat, it's not saying we'll still follow the law, but we expect to follow the law and not just react to something that someone showing up without their legal papers. So. Okay, this is an action item, so is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve?
It's a tie.
Either way.
Okay.
I'll second it, yeah.
Second, okay, all in favor?
Board passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you. 11C, report on opening of school LCAP operations. Ray?
Okay, so we opened the doors to the children on Thursday, August 24th. At the time that this document was written for the board, we had approximately 3,128 students. So give or take a few as of today, I can say I know we've enrolled 6 more. We do know that this is definitely a decrease from our enrollment last year, around 40-some students. We're hoping that that number continues to decrease and we continue to increase in our attendance as the year progresses. Just a huge thank you to our staff and our families in making this a positive experience, the opening of school. Everybody did a great job of getting the schools prepared and ready, and so we just appreciate all the hard work and the passion that went into that. I always like to highlight our lotteries, especially our kindergarten lottery at this time. Just know that the majority of our students who went through the kindergarten lottery way back in February did get their first choice, if not their second choice, a very high percentage in the 90s. So that's always good to note because it shows that our lottery system is effective. And then, as of recent, all of our schools have had back-to-school nights, with the exception of Lindemar Education Center. Theirs is tomorrow night, and they've been highly packed with students, and the staff's been there sharing with the parents what's going to happen at the school site for this coming year. So we're off to a great start.
And Ray, in this you say 91% got their first choice, but then went on to say, I think in the end that percentage is probably even a little bit higher.
Yeah, we're
than
closer to 97% now with the students that went through that lottery process.
I don't think you could really do much better than that until we get, would we ever reach 100%? I don't know. Interesting. Okay, any questions or comments? Okay. 11D, thank you. 11D, enrollment procedures, goal operations, Ray?
Okay, so Pacifica School District developed the Enrollment Procedures Handbook back in 2011, and annually I bring to the board any changes, suggestions, additions, revisions, deletions that we make to the handbook. This handbook does provide guidelines to inform staff and parents on a variety of items such as student registration, again, the lottery process, waitlist procedures, and just general information regarding enrollment. This year, there's just a few minor changes that have been made to strengthen the handbook with the procedures involved. And I believe that's it.
Okay. Okay, was there any input on the student enrollment procedures book, handbook? Okay, thank you. 11E, bilingual master plan, goal 1, 2, and 3. Wendy?
Okay, I bring forward to you this action item of the bilingual master plan. We really worked on this quite extensively last year and had to wait for a while just to make sure that the state was complete with their tables, et cetera, on how they were going to evaluate or measure our progress, especially for our English learners. We used, and it was our district-wide English learner team that comes together and looks at the documents. We used our current bilingual master plan that was already developed several years ago, so we just updated it. Some highlights that we did look at, as I shared, was we made it a little more comprehensible, we felt. We included the California dashboard, and we did move forward in looking at an alternative way to measure English learner progress for special education students. Because what we find is it is sometimes the handicapping condition or the disability itself that is hampering their English progress than it is the learning of English itself. And so we really felt compelled to have our IEP drive that process and the IEP team. I also want to thank some suggested modifications based on just the observations that you had about the master plan. One of them being that I went ahead and modified on page 4, or we put that up on page 4, I used the term colored tables as opposed to colored table, which is what the state uses. So I changed it to what the state title was. Also, a question was brought up about if the letter that goes to the parents when they have the results of the assessment of the CELT is in the home language of the family. And we do provide it in Spanish because that is our population that in our district that is the highest English learner population. We don't do it for the other individual ones unless it is requested from the school or a family would call and request that. CDE does provide, the California Department of Education, they do provide templates with translations, but there are so many, and an example might be Cantonese or Mandarin, or it's very difficult to find one Tagalog because it's hard to have one that's translated in Tagalog. So we really just provide the English. We have found that sometimes families are sometimes they prefer it in English. They don't want it translated. So we really work on a case-by-case basis with our school communities and our families and making sure we're meeting their needs and understanding how their child did on the CELT or the English Language Development Test, and what that means and how that impacts their program. The last piece, and I'm really embarrassed about this, but on page 17 of the handbook, there was a section about recruitment procedures, and it really didn't make sense. So Kathy kind of said, Wendy, what is this about? And I read it, and it didn't capture the markups. I don't know why it didn't bring the markup. So what I included here is what the current one was, and I highlighted in yellow what the changes would be, and then the bottom is the actual language, or what I call the clean version. And so what I've written about how we go about recruiting certificated staff, it would be written, the superintendent and the administrative assistants, human resources, work closely with each site during the staffing process to ensure every site and grade level has B-clad or clad credentialed teachers. Because if you have to be either clad or B-clad in order to have an English learner in your classroom. In order to support, and currently I'm proud to say, I think we only have one teacher right now who is not clad certified because she was hired from out of state. But she is in Prague, and many of the states don't require clad certification. So currently she is in a course to complete her clad requirements. And in order to support the implementation of the English language program and services at each school site, it is a hiring priority to staff teachers and support staff with personnel who possess the B-clad or clad credential. We have been very fortunate in finding clad. We are not so fortunate in finding B-clad. We do not necessarily have we do not have a need for a bilingual classroom, but we do use the model of SEDI, the English structure,
Instructional
English,
SDI.
Yeah. Yes, SEDI. We call it SEDI, I'm sorry.
It's the
Yeah.
Specially Designed Academic Instruction in English.
English. Thank you.
No,
It's right there.
Thank you, Google.
Yeah. It's called SEDI. So we do use that as our way of supporting our English learners in the classroom.
Okay, questions, comments?
So the only question that I had was kind of on the frequency. So everything kind of changed from the DLAC to LPAC across the board here, and there are some line outs in terms of how often the DLAC, which is I assume what the LPAC is now, meets. So you have crossed out. I mean, it's on page 25, but that's on the marked up version, so the pagination changes. Says that it meets at least 8 times a year, and that's crossed out, and there's nothing really there. And then when you go to the last page, there's another place where it's talking under the evaluation and accountability, I guess. On the very last page, there was talking about the EL Coordinating Council meeting as determined, and before it was bi-monthly. So I just want to know a little bit about the decisions of why to relax the frequency with which these various components were meeting. And then the only other question that I had was what you were talking about before with respect to families. And it wasn't clear to me whether families were offered to have these information accommodations in a different language, or if it was only upon request. Those are two very different things.
Yeah, it's usually upon request because they're mailed, the CELT is mailed home.
Yeah.
So usually if the CELT results.
Sure.
So parents will call, what is this? I don't understand this kind of situation.
Sure.
Then we will sit and explain it to them. Usually, and I have to say, it's my sense that all of the schools, Sunset Ridge probably has the most English learners, so that becomes part of their ELAC conversation, and the DLAC is held up at Sunset Ridge as well. And because we have so few English learner students throughout the schools, we really find that our families feel pretty comfortable of wondering what this is about, if they do, because we do inform them that their student is being self-tested during this period of time, etc. And then for the change of frequency on meetings, it really came through a kind of a process of getting to know the community. I think that we have multiple opportunities for not just English learner communities to have conversations with us, but we have the steering committee, which we meet twice a year. We have parent council, which meets twice a year, which they all kind of are the same group of parents. And I think what we discovered, and we talked to Jesus Contreras, who is the lead at San Mateo County Office of Ed, who kind of guides us around parent outreach, etc. his suggestion was, instead of having so many meetings and having very few, if any, parents come, to structure our agenda so that we highlight the English Learner Program, etc., in our agenda so that it does get mentioned and we do have opportunities for people to talk. So it's really sort of an organization and structure issue rather, and we were finding that we weren't getting many participants.
Okay, thanks.
So I'd just like to say that, you know, as much as we work on this, there's still some issues going on here with English learners and reclassifications, because I have a child who is still classified as an English learner, and she has not spoken another language in the household, but because of the way that we measure, because she has an IEP, she doesn't, you know, pass the self, you know, or the new test. And it's like, okay, wait a minute, you know, every year I get this notification. I go, okay, this makes no sense because she's not an English learner. I mean, it is her only language. But there was Spanish spoken in the home when she was very, very young, and so she got on that track and she got stuck on that track. So, you know.
So she would probably be a great candidate for the alternative redesignation. So, you know, and again, that's what I will take her name and we will take a look at it. We redesignate our students, so she'll probably have to go through she may not. I'm trying to think if she'll have to go through another assessment. But we redesignate in January and February of every year. You know, we let the kids go through that one process of self. We will probably change that next year because LPAC is now taking place. But we will take a look at that because that should not be happening. Yeah, I know. Sorry. Yeah. But see, this is how we hear, right?
Yeah.
Under communication, and we make it right. So, thank you.
So I had a question on page 5 talking about that English language proficiency assessment. And at the bottom, it talks about, you know, students transferring to the district from another district, students do not need to go through PSD initial identifications, records are obtained. If these records are not available within 10 days, English and primary language assessments proceed, identification takes place. And I realize there are all these needed steps, but I'm wondering what does that time frame look like? Because what I'm imagining is a student who cannot access the material because they don't speak the language. So if we're waiting 10 days and we're waiting for records and then we're assessing, I'm just wondering, do we have sort of a ballpark time frame that this student is sitting in our classroom not knowing what's happening, or?
Actually, usually we can, you know, as educators, get a good sense of a broad range of English language development of a student. So there's currently 5, it's moving to 3, but usually the levels 1 and 2 are really students who have a primary language other than English, who are needing a lot of support. And those are students who really don't speak English. And so when you have a student like that, you know clearly how to put in those supports, etc. Probably the levels 3 through 5 are the ones who are a little different because they have English, but you're not sure if they're really understanding the content piece. Mm-hmm. And that's why we quickly try to get a gauge on what their SALT level is, because if we don't have something, so we could probably manage for a few days, but if we don't get something from a school district quickly, which we usually do, mm-hmm. but if we don't, then we go ahead and do our own assessment so that we can say, okay, this child is really a level 3, so sometimes they can pass as like they're understanding everything, but we quickly find out that they're not gaining that content information. And we have to do a lot more scaffolding, the structured design of the lesson. And so, but if there are 4 or 5, they're probably much more on that higher end of English language development. And so we can bring them in accordance with most of the class, but do a little bit more academic language. We're finding that the content language gets very difficult as the content gets more robust as they get into the higher grades. So we do a quick gauge with students and really use that score, that self-score, to kind of refine it or to see if we really hit the mark with what we think. That's why the 10 days, we give people 10 days and then we say, forget it, let's do it ourselves.
But if it's apparent, if that students come in and they really are not understanding, you don't have that time frame that you're married to waiting.
Oh, yes, no, we
Okay.
don't wait. We put them, we have what we call Imagine Learning and Rosetta Stone for the older students.
Right.
Especially for those who are non-English speaking, so that they at least start to get those basics. And then, of course, you pair them with kids. I mean, students are so resilient. I mean, they just are sponges. It's amazing. And so we do all of that language support along the way. So we don't wait for the score. We do a best guess and then hope the score comes in and just sort of reinforces what our gut was. And then if we don't, then we do our assessment, just to ensure that we're on target.
Okay. The other question that I had, and I don't know why I didn't see that, that form at the back, the individualized, but I did look it over, and the individualized reclassification. My question was, English learners with IEP plan. Should a student who is identified as an English learner and has an IEP and does not meet standards for the district reclassification criteria, the individualized reclassification for ELs with an IEP form may be used by the IEP team to determine reclassification. And I'm wondering why it's saying may. Is there another way they might?
It may be determined by the team that the student should make progress in English, and it's not the learning disability that is hindering their progress. We may need to change our instructional practices to support them so they can go ahead and move through the redesignation process using the general ed process. But it's kind of like, with Andrea's daughter. We have to really take a look at that, because it could be her disability that is really hampering her ability, and that's where the IEP team comes in and has to make that determination. And then they would use this form as opposed to using that general ed form. But they might say, no, this child should be able to do it, and I think we need on our IEP to strengthen this piece of the practice in order for them to move forward in English language development. And many times it's really around not hitting the mark on CELT, which is probably a 4 or 5. You have to be a 4 or 5. It's really around the content piece. Like, are they reading on grade level? Are they, is there math around grade expectation? That type of thing.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else have?
I just want to make a comment. I've been holding it in. Like with what Andrea's gone through, is I've known 2 families whose children, they were Mexican, whose children were placed into English learners, yet they were competent English speakers. And so I just want to make sure that we're not classifying these kindergarten children who are speaking English, yet whose parents are speaking Spanish. And if we're saying, well, we need the parent to request it, and the district isn't communicating to them in their own language, there's going to be some kind of communication breakdown. And so how can we make sure that the children who are, speaking English in kindergarten and their parents who are speaking Spanish, that we make sure that they're not placed in ESL when they need not be. And I've heard a complaint, about that, and somebody called my husband and said, hey, they want to put my child into ESL and she doesn't belong there. She knows how to speak English well enough, and I want her in those classes. And so my husband, being the advocate he was, called the school district. So I just want to make sure we're not being one of those school districts that aren't communicating with our parents to find out exactly where the child needs to be placed. I know we're the experts, or we're supposed to be the experts, but I think communicating with them, is something that could be easily done.
Mm-hmm. So just so you know, Pacifica School District's practice is to really do an inclusive type model. We do not have ESL groups, or they really they are part of the classroom. English learners are part of the classroom, and we use that small group instruction time during the reading, writing workshop period for the teachers to pull those students who have who need direct instruction in perhaps an English language standard, which doesn't mean other students in the class, they can be pulled too, just not English learners. It depends upon if they need to learn that standard. So we do that through our workshop model, so it's all within the classroom. The other thing that we have done, and this is where it happens, is when families are registering their children, they have a home language survey they need to fill out. And if any one of those lines are filled with another language other than English, then they need to be identified as an English learner. And then what we do is we give the CELT, and which will become LPAC in the spring, and they could be identified as fluent English proficient, what we call FEPs. I know, another acronym, sorry. And then they get redesignated. But if they don't, there could be reasons why. And so we continue to monitor their progress, but we hear that a lot with some families, because I speak Spanish, but my child doesn't speak any Spanish. But because of that need for that academic language, we find that the identification of English learner is not a bad thing. It really, I believe, helps to strengthen that academic language in the home. The other thing that we have asked integrated services to do, i.e. MARTA, is to do a strong explanation about the home language survey and how to fill it out. And so one of the requests I've made of student services, I don't know how far you've gotten yet, Ray, is we have Diana Otero, who is our FLES teacher up at Sunset Ridge, to do a Spanish version online, kind of talking them through the home language survey so they know what they're filling out and why they're filling it out. So that's another piece that we're trying to do. Instead of saying, here's a packet, fill it out, we really want to be explicit about what this home language survey is about. And I think that could be helpful too.
So just to let you know, I have two little,
Oh, yes.
English
learners?
English learners as well at home, because it wasn't, Nika was filling it out and she said, well, Dutch.
Yeah.
Here you go, Dutch, this is what it is. And she said, what is this for? I said, I don't know, but for the first year or two, the district's going to get more money for them. So, no, I was just thinking that. But when is the CELT first administered?
The CELT, this year, we did kindergarten initials right now, up until September 30th, I believe.
Annie initials.
Well, okay, kindergarten, first of all, it's kindergarten initials, and any student who is coming new to our district who has not been assessed at CELT. So if it's a third grader who's new to the country, we do CELT, okay? Then in the spring is when they're gonna start LPAC.
Summited for the annuals, just for the annuals. Those are the ones that have previously done the initials and have been designated as English learners. off those initials, the ones that
Okay.
have not been designated fluent English proficient.
Gotcha.
So those become annual.
So the story is that you catch them very, very early,
We try to, yes.
like almost immediately.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And then that's where the difference between, as you look at the LCAP and you start our local control accountability plan, and we talk about long-term English learners and are we making the progress? And I believe we're in the blue. I mean, we do a pretty good job in monitoring those kiddos and making sure. Now, the other piece that we have to do is to monitor them 2 years after to ensure that they stay whole, that they stay on target with their academic progress. That's the hardest part because, you think that they know because they talk just like they're having conversations with us, but sometimes they're not getting that deep understanding of that concept because they don't have that language.
So they have to be checked again with the CELT.
We monitor them
Or
with
their-
their academic progress.
Okay, so with their smarter balance scores.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
Right.
That's, yeah. Okay. Great.
Yeah. I think the other difficulty is, they tested your kids when they were kindergartners to decide if they were fluent yet. Well, what 5-year-old is fluent in any language, To me, it seems like how do we really test them?
Yeah, they have to be pretty powerful tests, right? To be able to.
They're kind of fun, to be quite frank. They're really cute.
Little pictures, and they have to tell little stories.
Yes.
Okay, any other discussion?
That was an interesting conversation.
It was. Okay, this is an action item, so is there a motion to approve the bilingual master plan with the corrections that were outlined?
I'll move to approve the bilingual master plan.
Thank you. Second?
I will second.
Okay, all in favor?
Board passes 5-0, thank you.
the bilingual children.
11F, approval of unaudited actuals for 2016-2017 governance. Josie?
Okay, tonight we have the 16-17 unaudited actuals for the board's approval. In June, we did present with the adopted budget estimated actuals, and the unaudited actuals are fairly close to what was presented in June to the board. Our auditors have come out in the last few weeks and have been auditing the numbers, and they're still working on it back in their office. So far, we haven't found any issues in their review. They will give me a draft report in November, and then they'll come and present the report to the board in January. If the board approves this tonight, we will forward it to the County Office of Education, and they will also conduct their review of the 16-17 actuals. The next step will be for us to prepare the first interim report for 17-18. And I pointed it out on the memo that we are reflecting deficit spending, and we did project that in the June budget, and we are still projecting deficit spending for the next 3 years. We're closely monitoring our cash flow because our property taxes are only paid in December and May, and so we do have several months of negative cash flow, and the board did approve a loan of $5 million that can kind of float us through the months of negative cash flow. So the whole packet is here, Funds 1 through Fund 71, and all the supplemental forms and documents that the county requires for their review as well. Questions or?
My only question was, you said that it's slightly higher, mainly due to higher lottery revenues. I mean, was it like a landfall of lottery revenue?
No,
or?
not a huge amount, but the state gives us a number and throughout the year to estimate, and then at the end of they always give us a conservative number. So they and I don't know the exact number. It wasn't a huge windfall, but it's always a little bit higher, which is good because you don't want them to give us the opposite, and then we'll come up short.
Right.
It's also a little higher because some schools didn't spend. It's normal for them not to spend all their funds because they've ordered things, and sometimes things don't get received or finished throughout the summer. And so it shows up in the ending fund balance until the funds are spent in the next year. So it showed a little bit of a higher ending fund balance than what we had reflected in the estimated actuals.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, is there a motion to approve the unaudited actuals for 2016-2017? Okay, second? Thank Thank you. All in favor?
Board passes 5-0. Thank you.
11G, adoption of the GAN Resolution 2017-09-13-B, governance. Josie?
Okay, this GAN limit goes back to 1979, where the government was, the local government was trying to constrain the spending of local districts to kind of match what inflation is. And so every year there's a calculation, and there's a calculation attached to this item of what is the district's GAN limit. And the calculation shows what our GAN limit ended up being for 16-17, and we were not over appropriated, because if we were, then we would have to write a letter explaining, to the county and the state. And then it's also a recalculation of what the appropriations limit will be for 17-18. And there is a resolution attached to this item for the board to approve the resolution for the estimated GAN limit for 17-18.
Discussion? Okay, is there a motion to approve the adoption of the GAN Resolution 2017-09-13-B?
A motion to approve.
Thank you. Second? All in favor?
Board passes 5-0. Thank you.
Board bylaws, board policies, and administrative regulations.
We do have a business item for,
Oh.
Is this on business?
Did I skip?
No. I was thinking I'm on the sex offender one.
Yeah, that's what we're on.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to explain that one.
Yes. Please do.
I know sometimes we go and just review.
Yes.
This one we wanted to explain. We did review this in August with the board, and this was recommended by CSBA as a new policy. Pacifica School District did not have this AR 35.15 sex offender. And during our discussion, we talked about how Pacifica School District has a current ARBP 1240, and we also have the penal code 626.81, and both of those codes cover this AR that CSBA was recommending. So at that time, we discussed not bringing it forward, but it did not go on the consent agenda in the September board meeting. So now we're asking the board to approve this action item to not move forward with this AR, because we have sufficiently covered it in the other district policies and the penal code.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, this is an action item. Motion to approve AR 35515.5 sex offender notification not going forward.
That was fun.
Motion.
Thank you. Second? All in favor?
Board passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now we are on to our list. Speed reading list. Please speak up if you have anything you would like to discuss or comment on. Attachment BP 0000, Vision Use CSBA sample. Attachment C, AR 0000, Vision, delete. Oh, I guess I don't have to do that. Okay, attachment BP 0100, Philosophy. And I actually wanted to have a conversation about that. So, do you have it up? No? Okay. So the second, it's talking about the philosophy of the district, and it shows the marking out of every student in the district, regardless of gender, special needs, or social, ethnic, language, or economic background, has a right to high quality education that challenges the student to achieve his or her fullest potential. And the recommendation was every student should have an opportunity to receive quality education, regardless of his or her social, cultural, or economic background. So my question was, we are still including some things and not including everything, and does everyone feel that that covers? For instance, we're not including the gender, the special needs, ethnic language. I guess those were the three. So I'm just wondering how everyone felt on that. if you felt that just saying regardless of his or her social, cultural, or economic background was broad enough. And my question also was then, did we want to use the language from the DACA resolution? Or are we just okay with calling out just social, cultural, or economic background? And I realize the concern is if you don't include everything, you might be leaving something out, but it just seemed funny that we were only picking out 3 of the original bases that we were covering in the statement.
I think disability would be something that should be included.
Or ability.
Or ability.
Ability is usually how we're, I don't know, do you want to give your thoughts on it, Wendy?
I think that would just emphasize what every is, you could say every student including, so it just highlights it. So I think that's up to the trustee.
So we don't want to put all of those in because we don't want to leave out anything, but now that we're going to keep in social, cultural, economic background, it feels like we're going to leave something out. So every means every.
Yeah. So why are we including that last
all.
part? I mean, why don't we just say, every student should have an opportunity to receive a quality education, period.
How about we underlined every or something?
Right, I mean, it just seems like we're picking and choosing a few things, and then we're, I don't know.
Either put everything in or none.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Period
You
after every.
could take off
Just-
regardless of, so
Right.
receive a quality education.
Period.
Right.
We could do that.
What does everyone think about that?
I think
Good.
so.
Great.
Is that, I can't tell if Jesse's thinking or concerned.
No, I mean, I think that's one solution. It doesn't, I think that's fine, I'd be fine with it, but it is a philosophical statement, so I'd almost rather run the risk of leaving somebody out and
By
being
including?
as inclusive as possible, and stressing these points here. I guess I'm unclear why the strikeout got struck out. I'm not sure what the genesis of the decision to make this edit was. So, but I'm happy with every. I mean, every does cover it, right? We could kind of do a compromise here and say every student deserves to have a quality education, recognizing that there are students with various needs and all of these other things, right? So you're not,
Or you could just go back to what was struck out
Yeah.
and just use that.
Yeah.
Because I think
it's pretty good. I mean,
so you could do that too, because it is include every student in the district, and it just kind of
Social,
lists,
cultural,
and it's
right.
about a high quality education that challenges them to their fullest potential. So maybe their change is not as good as what you had before, and if that's how you feel, then we strike out their change and we go back to what you had.
yeah, I wonder what they were thinking.
Okay.
They must have had a reason for it, right?
Yeah.
So,
What would you prefer?
I prefer the original language,
Okay.
frankly. Should we take a vote?
yeah, social.
I mean,
Or is it just consensus?
a consensus? Anyone
Are we
have a
good?
concern with that?
I'm fine with the original.
Okay.
I think the original is.
Sounds like it's consensus
Yes.
too.
Okay,
Keep-
so I'll go with the original, but I'll still bring it back to second reading.
With
but
the
changing-
original,
yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Okay, E, 042041 Charter School Oversight. BP 2140 Evaluation of Superintendent. AR 4112.2 Certification. BP 4112.61 employment references. AR 4112.61, 4212.61, 4312.61 employment references. BB 9121 president. BB 9220 governing board elections. BB 9230 orientation. BB 9400 board self-evaluation. Okay, 12C, July 2017 manual maintenance 6000 series. BP 6161.1 selection and evaluation of instructional materials. Will, did you have something you wanted to?
I was on the next one, E.
Oh.
6161.
E6161.1, selection and evaluation.
So on this one, there were two minor edits that were brought to my attention with regards to this. It was on page 3. There's the word adopted at the beginning, adopted programs. That needs to be capitalized. This is at the beginning. I learned that from my years of. So the adopted would be capitalized, and then also farther down there is a paragraph, a note paragraph within the box that states the following paragraph is to be used by districts that maintain grades 9 through 12. That should be struck out of there since we are a district that's not grades 9 through 12. So those changes would be made on for the second reading.
Everyone's okay with that? Okay, thank you. Future agenda items.
Hey, look at the future agenda items. I do not see anything that we need to add.
I'm wondering if we should have an update on the band program. Do you think it would be then or November?
I'm not sure how far along we'll be, so
Okay.
can we consider, if we feel like we're ready to come forward with something, we can.
Okay. Just an update or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else?
I'll work with Kathy on when.
Okay, thank you. Okay, then it is 9:06 and we are adjourned.
Such a nice picture of the waves.
The computer was.
Not working well.
No, it was.
I bring my own just because I'm used to it. And of course, it's like right before we started going through the series, I inadvertently turned off, closed the browser. I'm like, now I have to go.